Hello and welcome to Thought Provoking Tech. I'm Zach, and in today's video, I'm going to be talking about cloud gaming with Fortnite, with a whole host of cloud gaming providers out there, and Liquid Sky. So, without further delay, let's go ahead and jump right to it. Account. I greatly appreciate that. GeForce Now is currently in a closed beta, meaning you have to request access, and I've been on a waiting list for about 4 months now and haven't got any invite codes, so I've been itching to add GeForce Now to my roundup and include that in all my cloud gaming videos, and also start to dig into it and do like a first impressions video and everything like that, and I haven't been able to simply because I haven't had access. So with his assistance, I was able to take control of his secondary account, and I can now start benchmarking GeForce Now. So that's going to be awesome. GeForce Now is definitely going to be a huge player in the cloud gaming market simply because they have the weight of NVIDIA behind them. So I definitely expect them to be a huge player once NVIDIA exits their closed beta and people can openly sign up for them. So it's going to be very awesome to start testing them. And just mad props for Darren for sacrificing his secondary account for science. So without further delay, let's go ahead and dig into those results from all these different cloud gaming providers. The graphics using the Epic preset, and I played at 1920 by 1080 with the FPS limit set to unlimited. So on that note, both of the Liquid Sky tiers have a cap at around 67 to 68 FPS on how much it would actually allow the maximum FPS result to be. And GeForce Now will only stream 120 FPS to your local client. On that note, since GeForce Now is somewhat of a lockdown platform, you can install games from Steam, but you can't access the Windows desktop, at least not easily that I've been able to discover. I wasn't able to install Fraps natively on the GeForce Now remote computer, so I had to get the FPS results from my local client. So that means that even though GeForce Now is definitely capable of outputting higher frame rates than 120, the best I could do frame rates throughout that playthrough, it is kind of lengthy, so you can just skip around, but it did do very well. But the best I can do is actually capture when the game actually falls below the 120 mark. And for a game like Fortnite, which is relatively easy to run, that's not going to happen too often with the tier of hardware that NVIDIA has in their GeForce Now platform. It's simply so powerful that it's not going to fall below the 120 mark much at all. So on that note, let's go ahead and dig into the minimum FPS results. So in terms of cloud gaming, the big goal is to achieve at least a 1080p 60 FPS experience with our average FPS results, and we actually had 3 tiers that nearly achieved that with their minimum results, with the Paperspace P5000 machine, the GeForce Now, and the Shadow machine all achieving very close to 60 FPS. In fact, all these are guaranteed to have a very good experience and actually our FPS results. On that note, the Paperspace P4000 had minimum results around the 39 FPS mark, but was still a very good experience, and its average results, which we'll get to later, were definitely well above that 60 FPS goal line. The only 2 tiers that really fell short in the minimum FPS results was I like to see at least 30 FPS on the minimum results, simply so that you don't have dips below that 30 FPS mark and have very choppy gameplay, were the 2 tiers from Liquid Sky. Both the Liquid Sky Gamer tier and the Liquid Sky Pro tier did not perform great with the settings maxed out, but I have done the work and done several playthroughs on adjusting the quality settings for Liquid Sky, and I will have an optimization video following up. I've already actually recorded it. I just have to edit it after editing this video, so both of those should go up hopefully in the same week. But both of these tiers were definitely well below what we want with minimum FPS results, and had some moments that were choppy, especially the gamer tier, which is some of these machines nearly exceeded that 60 FPS goal by 30 FPS. And when you have machines that have an average FPS at or pretty close to 90 FPS, then there isn't much of a reason to bring back your quality settings at all, unless you are trying to play on a high refresh rate monitor. On that note though, for this to actually have any benefit to you, you have to have a very low latency between you and the cloud server. For instance, even at 90 FPS with a refresh rate of 90 Hertz, you would need a latency between you and the cloud server of 11 milliseconds. In fact, actually, for that to even have any benefit to you, you have to account for the round trip from you to the server and back. So that brings your latency between you and the cloud server to about 5.5 milliseconds. And to actually achieve that realistically and consistently, you're going to have to be very close physically to the data center. So unless you are very close to the data center, there's probably not a lot of real world benefit to even reducing the quality settings of these machines. So moving on to our average FPS results for our two Liquid Sky machines, which are the only two machines that I really personally adjust the quality settings on to achieve a better experience. With the Pro tier, it was pretty close to achieving that 60 FPS average, but since it did have some pretty nasty dips on the low side, I do like to see at least around 30 FPS on the minimums and 60 FPS on the average, just so you can have a nice consistent experience. So with the Liquid Sky machine, even though it was pretty close to that 60 FPS mark, I would knock off the settings a decent amount simply so you can have a more consistent experience. On the gamer tier, that's where things get really interesting and you have to knock the settings down quite a bit to have a good experience at all, because its average is around 30 FPS and it maxed out at 48 FPS on average. So it needs a lot of help to get to a playable state. So what you're looking at here is the actual FPS results from about a 2-minute segment of gameplay. I used to include a very similar slide to this, but I included it from like the minimum match length of a match of PUBG, for instance, in my PUBG video, which was like 15 minutes. So you had 15 minutes of FPS results all combined into and squished into a little bitty graph, and it was so messy that you couldn't decipher good information from it. So that's why I moved to a 2-minute segment so these machines can render. But the minimum and average are very good data points because they show the dips and they also show your average results. But if you have two machines both with an average of 60 FPS, but one machine is ranging from 25 to 80 and one machine is ranging from 50 to 70, that machine that's ranging from 50 to 70 is going to be a much better here. What I take away here is on the high end, the Shadow machine seems to be more consistent than the Paperspace machines. It keeps in a little bit narrower of a band. And another note real quick is the GeForce Now machine. It seems like it's very consistent, but that's because I can't install Fraps on the remote machine because I don't have full access to the Windows desktop with the GeForce Now, which is a big drawback in my opinion. I do miss having more complete control over my cloud gaming machine, but because of that, I can only capture the FPS results on my local machine, which will slightly affect the FPS results, but I'm not too worried about that. But the biggest thing is their client is limited to 120 FPS on the streaming side, so I can only capture a maximum of 120 FPS when I'm doing my benchmarking. So it makes it artificially look like it is more consistent than it is. It might have spikes up to 150 or 160 just like the Paperspace machine does, but I'm not going to be able to capture those the spikes. So for games like Fortnite that are relatively easy to run, then it will look more consistent than it actually is in real life. So I just did want to point that out to make it so that you knew that it wasn't super consistent, even though it might not actually be in real life. So there are some drawbacks to this data, but it is interesting just to see the actual FPS results. So that's why I included it in this video. But if you have any ideas or thoughts on how I'm doing the FPS portion of this data, then leave those in the comments below and I'll definitely consider that when I make my next video, which I haven't decided exactly what it's going to be on, but it's probably going to be on Overwatch, simply because I haven't done a video on that, even though it's been on my list forever and ever, and I've just never made it around to it yet. Alright, so that's pretty much it for today's video, guys. Hopefully you found the data in this video interesting, and hopefully this video will help you decide which cloud gaming provider is the best fit for you. And if you did like this video or found it helpful, do give it a big like. I greatly appreciate that. Also, if you're not already an existing subscriber, smash that subscribe button to stay tuned for more great videos from Thought Provoking Tech. Also, if you haven't already clicked it yet, click that bell icon as it'll help you be notified as I release new videos, and you definitely don't want to miss those because there's some great content with cloud gaming and also other tech related videos. So that's pretty much it, guys, and until next time, Zach out.